prosecution outlined how accounting practices
fuck?
of Conley
What?
Sessions did not
What
follow
kind of
the
likeness is that?
procedure.
If they were great artists, they'll be in a museum.
Evidence today may signal at least one
You fucking fodder for cartoonists now?
All right, time for another Gutter Boys episode. That is about a week late. That's on me. Gutter Boys is a small press comics podcast about the ins, the outs, the highs, and the very deep, endless lows of making comics. I'm your host, JB, with my co-host, Cam. And on today's episode, we are joined with Brooklyn-based cartoonist Connor McCann.
Hell yeah.
To talk about his newest book at Strangers Publishing, Demon Summoner Gash Gash.
And you know, for a book that's titled Gash Gash, we didn't really talk a lot about Gash.
Yeah, not a lot of Gash talk.
Yeah, should have talked more about Gash. Maybe we'll have him back on for the Patreon and talk about Gash.
The all Gash episode.
Yeah, Caroline Gash. Sorry, Caroline, I shouldn't have said that.
Caroline Gash. Caroline Gash Gash.
Yeah, so we had a conversation with Connor. It was a really good episode. That book is also really, really good. We get into all that stuff on the back end. But before we do that, a couple things to plug here as always. Our friend Drew Hall over in Columbus is doing another Distractor reading event. And it's at the Laughing Ogre, a great shop in Columbus, Ohio, located at 4258 North High Street. It is on Saturday, December the 13th from 7 to 9 p.m. The cool thing about this one is it is a food drive and fundraiser. All proceeds will be directly given to the Southside Community Ministries Food Pantry. There is also going to be a comics reading with C.M. Campbell, Victoria Douglas, Emmy Guinness, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing this right, but Dara Naragi. And Drew will be hosting it. There will also be a raffle with the funds going to the food pantry. I'll also be sending in a copy of Butter, as well as American Nature Presents #2 to be part of that raffle. So definitely stop by there at the Laughing Ogre for a good cause there, folks. And yeah, so after Distractor, if you still have some money left over that you don't want to donate to a good cause, you can donate to our cause.
That's a terrible, that's a terrible ad read.
Let me redo that. All right.
God damn.
Alrighty. And
fuck them people. Jesus.
Alrighty. Yeah, we're this is a you know what? We're MAGA now. Okay, folks? Fuck the poor people.
Eat all of the poor people.
Yeah.
Give us your money.
Alrighty. And if you still want more Gutter Boys content, as always, you can go to patreon.com/Gutter Boys. We've had a couple fun episodes in a row over there. The last one was a return of Real Boys with special guest Katie Skelly. We talked about the movie Titan, or how the fuck do you say that?
Titan.
Yeah.
Like the wrestler, Teton.
Oh, yeah. And we watched the movie Titan, and you can hear all about what we thought about that and more on that episode. And we've also got another one coming up with special guest Ryan Cecil Smith. Ryan has been running the show Gauntlet over in Southern California, and he texted me saying he had a lot to say about these shows. So we will be recording with him shortly for our second episode of November, and that'll be out ASAP. In addition to that, we've got over 100 episodes in the vault with previous guests and even just ourselves, and we appreciate it. $5 a month, get you those bonus episodes. You get at least 2 a month there, folks. So we appreciate you, as always, for supporting us. And if you're new, come on over. Check us out.
Yeah, and obviously we are nearing the end of 2025. Another year in the bucket. And we have 2 more main feeds, I believe, right?
Yeah, including this one. This one and another one.
And the year-end award episode. So that's
Yeah.
2 more after this.
Yes. So
Yeah.
for the rest of the year, I guess our itinerary is this episode. Then our next episode, we've got Joe Walsh, Cincinnati-based cartoonist, who just put out a phenomenal book. But we'll let you all tune into that episode so we don't get too far ahead of ourselves there. And then after that, like JB said, it's the Redacted of the Year episode. We've been told that we are problematic. And
Should we name it the Unk of the Year?
oh, Unk of the Year. That's actually pretty good. Yeah. I'm sure someone will say that's problematic in a year or two, though.
I'm speaking on behalf of the uncle community.
Yeah.
And I am very offended by this.
Yes. Fake uncles out there. Yeah, I don't know. You know what, folks? Let us know what you think the award should be named. Because, you know, we're open for suggestions. And if you follow me on Instagram, at Cam Del Rosario, as always, I'm going to put up a little questionnaire thing for you to send in your favorite books of the year, as well as your nominations for Redacted of the Year and Simp of the Year. So get ready to respond to that. And if you want to hear your responses read on the show, that'll be happening in about a month.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get into our interview, we're going to take a quick break as usual. And then when we return, we will be joined with Connor McCann to talk about Demon Summoner Gash 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 Gash. So stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
A young man kidnapped and forced to become a Sicario. A disposable soldier in the wars of organized crime. A young woman kidnapped and trafficked. Her life reduced to a commodity in a brutal underworld. When their paths cross, they see a way out. Will they have a shot at survival? This is How to Disappear in Mexico, a mostly black and white 44-page comic book by cartoonist E. Esparza. A comic inspired by what may lie behind some missing persons cases in Mexico. The comic book is finished and getting released through Kickstarter, which launches May 14th. The digital version is just $2. What a bargain, right? The print version is $31 including shipping, and again, the Kickstarter launches May 14th. The pre-launch page is up now. Just look up How to Disappear in Mexico on Kickstarter.com.
Are you ready for a wild ride? Get ready to meet the Santos sisters. 2 ordinary girls with an extraordinary secret. One day, while combing the beach in their hometown of Las Brisas, the Santos sisters discovered a pair of beautiful medallions. What happens next changes their lives forever. The medallions are imbued with the powers of a goddess, Madame Sosostris, and can transform them at will into flying, gun-wielding, mask-wearing murder heroes with hearts, if not gold, then at least candy. That's right, it's a mix of Archie Comics meets Love and Rockets with a healthy dose of kick-ass action. Join Ambar and Alana as they fight crime, date dumb guys, and, well, try to stay sane in a world of assassins, zombies, crazy ex-girlfriends, and more. The Santos Sisters Volume 1 hardcover from Fantagraphics is coming to a comic shop or bookstore near you on March 11th of 2025. Don't miss out on this Technicolor tapestry of irreverent comic book fun. Santos Sisters, because life's a beach until it's not.
Indie Northern Kentucky, or Inc., is the Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati area's only zine, alternative comic, and small press bookstore, featuring over 400 different zines, alternative comics, and small press titles. A creative space with supplies to ideate and create your own zines and comics, and an event space for your zines, comics, or book release or reading. For more information about how to sell your zines and comics at Inc., stop by indieNKY.com. That's IndieSky.com. Visit our new home in Dayton, Kentucky, and read what the cool kids are reading.
Underground Kingdom Comics Presents Romance is the 3rd issue of a new anthology showcasing the UK's most exciting small press cartoonists. This 28-page A5 comic features cover art by Vincent Bell Robertson and comics by Lily Blakely, Adam Falp, and Anna Redmond, plus pinups from Kai Reynolds and Matt Greaves. Daredevils and Warriors wrote, "If you want to leave your comfort zone and are looking for thoughtful and original comics that have an edge without being edgy, then you should check out these UKC books." You can buy Underground Kingdom Comics Presents Romance now, along with the previous 2 issues, Horror and Crime, and original art, by backing our Kickstarter, which is live until Friday, March 15th. Don't be a cunt, buy a comic, innit? Hell yeah. Meow. Sid the Cat magazine is out now. If you've ever been to an amazing rock and roll show and thought, I wish I could experience this moment again, but in comic form, then Sid the Cat magazine is for you. Fiercely independent show promoters Sid the Cat have joined forces with comics journalist Andrew Greenstone to bring you an ongoing publication that documents the SoCal indie rock scene. This stunning 52-page full-color magazine features comics, articles, photos, and illustrations from a rotating cast of local illustrators and writers. It's a celebration of Sid's artists and venues and supports those keeping the bleeding edge of the indie music scene alive. Our first issue covers musical artists Big Thief, Illuminati Hotties, Mike Kroll, Fucked Up, Finn Lilly, Katie Kirby, Kate LeBon, Cursive, Christian Lee Hudson, No Win, and so many more. If you are a fan of comics, indie music, zines, rock reports, or community by the way of culture, order a copy now at sidthecat.com/Sid-Zine. Again, that's sidthecat.com/Sid-Zine.
Athenium Comic Art is an original art website for some of the best cartoonists in the business. They currently represent Remy Boydell, Marie Capelle-France, Nicole Gu, Jonathan Hill, Emma Hunsinger, Casey Nowak, Micah Song, and Tilly Walden. Athenium Comic Art gives fans the opportunity to own an original piece of art from their favorite comics and support the artists that they love. In their short time in business, they've already shipped many iconic pages out to hardcore fans across the globe. Don't miss out on your chance to own a one-of-a-kind piece of history. Check out their website, atheniumcomicart.com, and type in Gutter Gang at checkout to receive free shipping on your first order. Again, the website is atheniumcomicart.com, and the code is Gutter Gang.
Morning, Gary. Morning, Marianne. Need a menu? Nah, I'll just have the usual. You sure do love your eggs and coffee, Gary. Best way to start your morning, Marianne. Well, that and an issue of Town and County. What's that? Town and County is a new comic series written and drawn by cartoonist Alex Nall. He's that guy that wrote them books about teaching and that Mr. Rogers feller. Oh, he was such a nice man. The first issue is 36 pages of black and white comic stories with beautiful color covers and features 6 stories about folks in our little township here in Illinois, like Susie Barber, the house cleaner that uncovers her client's dirty laundry, if you know what I mean, and Stanley Pepper, that big feller that just lost his job and took to drinking every night at Bugs's Tavern. Well, ain't that something? Town and County is published by Ivy Terrace Press, headquartered in Chicago. Chicago? Who would want to live there? So dirty. Each issue comes with a copy of the Hometown Hero, our little town's newsletter, and it's only $8. $8? Where can I get it, Gary? You can order a copy of Town and County on the internet at storeenvy/Alex Nall Comics. Oh, there's your breakfast, Gary. Thanks, Marianne. Nothing like a cup of coffee and a good comic book.
Rust Belt Review is a quarterly comics lit magazine featuring serialized and short-form comics from some of the most exciting cartoonists in the small press scene today. Volume 1 features work from Gutter alums M.S. Harkness, Audra Stang, and Caleb Orecchio, along with work by Andrew Greenstone, Sean Knickerbocker, and Juan Jose Fernandez. You can order your copy of Rust Belt Review today by going to rustbeltreview.org. Enter in promo code GUTTER to receive $2 off your order. Again, that website is rustbeltreview.org. Promo code GUTTER.
The Last Aviatrix is a post-nuclear adventure comic. by independent, Los Angeles-based cartoonist Buster Cagle. The story follows Summer, our last aviatrix, who pilots the sole-surviving airplane, a nuclear-powered B-29. As she travels the ruined world finding ways to survive and help humanity, while dealing with the imminent threat of the Atom-born, a rare breed of atomic wizards that want to see her out of the sky, her mission becomes complicated when she accidentally picks up Henry, an Atom-born child who wields incredible power, and Clementine, a berserker on a quest for vengeance. Can our aviatrix survive this ruined and irradiated wasteland? Every issue can be read for free on bustercagle.com/comics. Paper copies can be ordered as well, but you can still read it for free. If you like wizards or warplanes, go check it out.
Now, back to our program.
Yeah. All righty, and welcome back from the break. Today on Gutter Boys, we have long-time anticipated guest and Strangers Publishing roster member, Connor McCann. You may know him from his first work over there, God Bless the Machine, but he is here to promote his brand new, very thick graphic novel, Demon Summoner Gash Gash. What's up, Connor?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Hey, man, we're here.
I love that you described it as thick. That's kind of been the first thing people say to me when they see the book in person is they kind of can't get over how big it is.
I mean, it's an accomplishment to do that much work and get it out and to have it, packaged up so nicely. I mean, looking at what, just giving Eddie his props over at Strangers, just looking at what he was doing at the beginning compared to like the product he's putting out now, it's light years better and it's a complete package. So congrats on putting out something so substantial and for it looking so great.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a shock to me finally getting the book and looking at it and seeing how much how many pages I had drawn. I didn't anticipate the book to be as long as it ended up being. And I kind of felt like my relationship with Eddie while I was working on it was like every 6 months, I'd be like, I need 6 more months to finish the book. And that went on for 2.5 years. So it was kind of a shock to me as well.
Okay, well, you just brought that up. We like to kind of talk about like the new thing and like the process behind it as well as getting into your career. But you just mentioned you spent 2.5 years working on this book. Is it actually out yet? Like, can you actually go to the store and buy this thing yet? Or was this an advance copy?
So it'll be out through Lunar the first week of December, but it's at, like a wig shop, web shop, and all of the like small indie distributors currently. So people can get it right now.
Okay, hell yeah. And then it's streets, like you can get it from actual comic stores in early December?
Yeah, I think it's December 3rd.
Perfect. All right, sweet. So you finished working on it, I'm guessing, earlier this year?
I finished it December 28th, 2024. So a little less than a year ago.
What's it like working on something for that long? How much does it change for you as the process is happening? And then to finally compile it and look at it and be like, okay, I'm happy with this. I know that's kind of like a lot, but if you just want to walk through piecing together a project of that length and, what it was like to work on it.
I mean, it was pretty excruciating. I think generally, there's like a push and pull between how happy I am with what I'm making over the course of any other comic. But with this one in particular, I just perpetually felt like I could not get it to a place I was happy with pretty much until the very end. The way I see the book is each section is designed to sit alongside the other sections in the book. So, for example, in chapter 2, you have this very like chatty, verbose kind of black comedy set in a startup environment. And then it's immediately followed up by this, very quiet piece in Griselda's house. So until I had all of those pieces and could see how they fit next to one another, I was kind of just working from a place of abject terror that it wasn't going to come together. And, even when I finished it, I wasn't really sure how it turned out. I think I was just so physically and emotionally exhausted having worked on something for so long with such high intensity that it took a couple months of kind of just like laying face down on my bed and walking around the Brooklyn Botanic Garden on the off hours before I could like look at it and be like, oh, okay, this, was actually interesting and somewhat successful. So
Now, one thing, I want to say about it is it's just pure comics. You're a one-man show over there. You're doing all the lettering, all the coloring, all the inking, all the, layouts, everything. That's all you, right?
yes.
Yeah, it's pure comics in the sense of like, all that stuff is changing throughout the story, but fitting the needs of, the chapter at the same time. So in a way, you can look at this stuff and be like, oh, it's influenced by XYZ, but it's also its own thing. So when it comes to constructing a comic, because you'll have, your traditional, I want to say traditional page layouts, but then you'll move to like an infographic with like text and so forth. So when it comes to like constructing these kind of things, are you mindful of that from the beginning, or is this something that you're doing as you're working on it and it comes to you?
Yeah, I'm absolutely mindful of it from the beginning. I kind of keep like a checklist of questions that I ask myself while I'm putting together each scene in the book. Yeah, it's like, what makes this scene visually interesting? What is the objective of the scene? What makes this scene interesting and memorable to read? What makes this scene fun to draw? So for every part of the book, I kind of have to interrogate myself and come up with some sort of concrete answer as to what makes a given section compelling. And generally the way I do that is by finding some sort of specific use of like the language of comics that I haven't used in any other part of the book. So for example, to just go back to like that startup section in chapter 2, I was thinking a lot about Shitaro Ishinomori's Cyborg 009, and I wanted to do something that was on like a 12 panel grid. And then you also have a character who's like speech bubbles are fonts, and then you have very loud typographic elements that kind of break up the monotony of this very chatty 12 panel grid section.
Which to me, one thing that I think with the book that really stood out to me is like you mentioned the fonts and like the lettering. A lot of the times this can be done and executed in a way that, to be quite frank, it sucks. It doesn't in your book. But
Good.
How did you find that balance? Like, because like, was that just something it just felt good to you? Like, I'm just like, I've never lettered a book with so many different types of like, I don't want to say fonts because I feel, or, that may be insulting. Like, did you actually craft the fonts yourself, or these things you downloaded? And what's it like for you process wise to feel good about something like that?
That's a really good question. I mean, so my day job during this, while I was working on this book, and even still now, is as a graphic designer. I went to RISD and I didn't study graphic design, but I took a class there on expressive typography. That was like probably the best and most influential thing I did there. So it's kind of just been a trial and error. I've always just wanted to combine typography and fonts within the context of, making narrative art. I just think when it works well, and I would agree with you, it's very easy for it to look bad. It just adds a new element to it that really excites me and feels fresh.
Hell yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned RISD. So let's talk a little bit about your development as an artist. Going into school, did you have an idea in terms of what you wanted to do, or at least a vague, broad understanding of what you wanted to do?
Absolutely. So the Hellboy movie came out when I was like 7, and I my first memory is like of reading a comic. So I've been a lifelong comic reader. But seeing the Hellboy movie at that age and then discovering Mike Mignola's work and that independent comics were a thing, like from the time I was in, second grade, I wanted to be an independent comic creator. And then when I was in middle school, my best friend, writer, his mom went to RISD and she was colleagues with David Mazzucchelli. And so I was kind of like becoming friends with him. At the same time, I was reading Batman Year One, and then Asterios Polyp also came out that year. So I think from like an early age, I was like, I wanted to make independent comics. And then from having this like tangential relationship to David Mazzucchelli's work, he went to RISD. I was like, RISD is the place to go where I can have the best education possible. And then in high school, I had started posting my work on Tumblr and had gotten like a little bit of an audience. Like, I'd published 2 full-length graphic novels, and they didn't stick around in terms of, there was no extended correspondence, but the first 2 people to ever buy my work online were Michael DeForge and Koyama. So
wow, okay, crazy.
Yeah, crazy.
Those are like the first 2 sales you ever made.
literally, yeah. And Michael DeForge, is probably my favorite modern comic artist. So it as a 15-year-old, that felt like, I don't know, seeing the face of God or something.
Yeah,
but,
you were born mid 90s, right? I think I saw that in the back of the book. When were you born? I'm sorry.
1996.
Yeah,
so
young guy. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be turning 30 in a couple months.
Hell yeah, not so young guy, I guess, but hell yeah. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Somewhere in the middle, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So, so you were posting on Tumblr. This was when you were 15, you said?
Yeah, from like 15 to like 18. Yeah, I was posting in progress works. And, there was a really thriving comic scene at the time. Something that I kind of lament that kids don't really have now is like the internet in this moment feels like almost like an omnipresent mesh over society. But I think when I was in high school, it was like something you could escape into. And there were all of these environments that felt like boutiques or salons with like really interesting indie comics being made. And that was kind of what I was being exposed to while I was making that early work.
Well, I just want to ask, I know it's easy to just like find the internet, but obviously being wrapped up in that mid 2010s Tumblr scene at such a young age, you had to have stumbled across something on Tumblr to make you gravitate towards indie comics. I kind of feel like you're pretty young to be getting into that kind of stuff at that age, just compared to other people we've had on the show. So was it just the magic of the internet and this stuff finding its way onto your Tumblr dashboard that you found like DeForge and Koyama Press and so forth at such a young age? Or did you were you reading comics and you were tired of what you were reading, so you started seeking that stuff out? How did you find that stuff at such at such a young age is really what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, what really got me into indie comics, like small press stuff, was there were 2 podcasts that I was listening to when I was like 12. It was iFanboy. I don't know if you guys remember that one, or Indie Spinner Rack. So that was like, one funnel towards indie comics. And then the second was, I think I had just happened to see an article where someone had linked Brandon Graham's Live Journal, which at the time was like, it seemed like this complete melting pot of all eras of comics, where he was posting like obscure manga, but then also DeForge's work and like James Stokoe, Marley Zarconi, Becky Cloonan. And so I think those artists were also migrating to Tumblr from Live Journal at the time. So I'm guessing that's how I initially found my way onto there.
I had Live Journal, but the Live Journal I knew was like 03, 04, and it was just like emo diary entries. Was like Live Journal kind of popping for comics? Do either of you know that? I mean, I guess it seems like it.
I remember pretty much only seeing Brandon's Live Journal. I got this, like, I remember looking for more, and it was just like collections of dead links, basically.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Were you aware of any kind of comics posting on Live Journal, JB?
Not specifically. I think it was just based on, like very key individuals doing it.
Yeah. And Zanga, yeah, definitely not on over there. That was, I think, before Live Journal. Yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Sorry, I'll let you. I know you were going to ask something, JB. I just wanted to get that in there.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to go back and talk more about inspiration, specific artists that you were looking at that affected how you think about making comics. So obviously we've mentioned DeForge, we've mentioned Mazzucchelli, we've mentioned Hellboy and Mike. Oh my God, his last name's escaping me. My brain's cooked.
Mignola, right?
Mignola, thank you.
Yeah,
Big Nuts Nola. Was there anyone else, either in high school and through college, that you were looking to as sources of inspiration for how you would want to tackle your approach to comics?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest influence on my work.
Oh, Ishinomori. Sorry, we also mentioned Ishinomori. Shout out, the king Ishinomori.
Yeah, amazing. Eric Powell comes to mind, like the Goon.
Dude, he's underrated, man. I feel like the Goon's always been around, but you don't really see a lot of Goon fans. You see a lot of Gooners now, but not Goon fans.
Yeah, I know. I don't even want to get into that. My heart goes out to him because I think he's like the most unsung hero in comics. You know, I think the Goon is like kind of a perfect comic where it delivers the goods in terms of being this like these perfect self-contained little stories. But, you know, every couple of issues, he's experimenting with new techniques and new mediums. And at the same time, it feels deeply personal and weird. And the writing kind of reminds me of like reading Mikhail Bulgakov or Dostoevsky or something. Like there's this pathos, but also a great sense of humor. So I would say his work is, you know, when I don't feel like drawing, when I don't want to make anything, I can like return to that book and kind of find something. So there's him. And then another really big one, and actually this kind of gets back to the typography discussion, was, you know, in middle school, I discovered the Peter Mendelssohn reissues of Osamu Tezuka's Dororo and Blackjack. And those really blew my mind, where they looked like no other comics at the time.
Right.
But they were so elegantly designed. And I thought they were elegantly designed, but still spoke to the authentic spirit and voice of the comics. And that was another instance where I was like, okay, graphic design is something you can use to enhance the work you're already making. So those are two that come to mind.
Well, speaking of graphic design real quick, I kind of want to segue into this. You mentioned that you have a day job in graphic design. Is that something you're currently doing for your day job?
Yeah, remote graphic design job.
Okay, as a graphic designer, did you pursue that as a means to have a life making art as a way to, you know, make income, or is it something that kind of just happened?
Yeah, so I kind of lucked into it, I feel like. You know, I was self-publishing comics all throughout high school. And then in art school, I bought a risograph for really cheap. And so I was just spewing out like little zines all the time. And, you know, I would do the graphic design for all of those books and really love the process. Like, there's just part of me that just fundamentally enjoys putting like words and pictures together in compelling combinations. So I would say I authentically enjoy it. And, you know, while it is how I like make a living, I'm not, you know, I'm not toiling away in InDesign being like, you know, this fucking sucks. I'm having a nice time.
Well, one thing that like I've wanted to do over the years is, I mean, we always harp about comics not being a sustainable way to make a living. You know, you can always get lucky like you can in any kind of creative field. However, I do, you know, the older I get, the more I'm curious about artists with quote unquote artist day jobs and, you know, as to how they're fulfilling versus not fulfilling. You know, it's just something I find interesting, you know, because it is like scratching that creative itch, but also like you're in that 9-to-5 box. So I just like to give people's different, you know, takes on that, and also just kind of offer insight into how to use your skills as an artist and, you know, I guess make a living outside of comics, because people do ask us that in DMs. So it is interesting to get your perspective on that. Do you think that, are you able to divorce artwork from a personal standpoint and artwork at work? Or do you find it hard to kind of move between the two?
Yeah, I think they're fundamentally different. My brain kind of like goes out the back of my head when I do design work in terms of, to me, it feels like exercising or like, I don't know, eating a salad or going on a run. Like, I think it makes my comics better having to do design work every day, but there's just like a puzzle solving aspect of it that feels totally different from comics. Also because I have no real emotional investment in the work, right? Like,
right.
I enjoy doing it, but you know, it's not like I'm telling some grand metaphor about some sort of personal trauma as I make LinkedIn graphics or something.
Yeah, and JB has more insight there, because I've never actually like had like a gig where I'm able to be creative to make a living. And, you know, I know JB kind of does like graphic design stuff at work as well. So he probably has more input and to add into that as well. But yeah, I just find it interesting, you know, because a lot of the times we find ourselves going to school with these like, I don't want to say delusions, because I mean, we're out here doing the damn thing. And, you know, we know many people that are successful in so many different fields when it comes to arts. But like finding a way to, I don't know, I guess be a sustainable artist under the fucking capitalist society we're in. Like, it's crazy, but I guess there's a way to do it. I guess all that to say, I think it translates to your work. When you mentioned you were a graphic designer, like, oh, this makes like a lot of fucking sense because everything is so thought out and packaged well together. I did have one question though, because to my knowledge, you were talking about, you had zines and stuff in high school, but as far as like, since I've been aware of you and your presence over at Strangers, you just did the smaller book, the God Bless the Machine book, which was, I don't even, a quarter of the size of this one?
I think it was 40 pages, and this one's 230.
Oh, okay. So give or take about 25% of the book. So I'm not going to do the math there. But what was it like going from making such a small, I don't want to say small, 40 pages is nothing to shake a stick at, but comparatively speaking, it is small to the new book. What was it like going from that to 240 pages?
It was chaotic. I would say God Bless the Machine, I had a really clear idea of what I intended to do, and I pretty much stuck to that plan the entire time. I wanted to make this very dense 40-page book that sort of touched on Astro Boy, and like I was listening to a lot of Drain Gang and reading Ghosts of My Life by Mark Fisher, and I think it was all about synthesizing those elements in a very clear way. But when it came time to do Demon Summoner Gash Gash, there were some pretty clear influences at the start, but it was really weird. And I've never had this experience making there were no other comics I've made that felt like this, where it felt like I had this like internal homing beacon towards a specific texture and feel and tone I wanted the book to have. But just time and time again, I could not get there. And it took a long time and, having the majority of the book done before I felt like I had reached that sort of internal location.
Hell yeah. Now, this book, the new one, it is broken down into 4 chapters. Did you have any thoughts to put that out as 4 separate issues, or was it always envisioned to be a book?
I think initially when Eddie from Strangers had asked me if I wanted to do a follow-up, we had talked about maybe releasing it as 2 70-page installments. I had expected it to be around 140 pages. But like there was like a real dark night of the soul moment where I think I had drawn maybe 50 pages of the book and really felt like it wasn't working, and that the texture I had really wanted it to have was not there. So I stopped drawing it for a little while and then came back and was like, maybe if I just let this book be however long it wants to be, it will reach that specific tone. And so I went back through probably the first chapter and a half and added a lot more pages. And I think from that moment on, I was just like, there's no way I can serialize this because the book is starting to look so much better, having revised upon what I did months earlier. And so that kind of became the mode of working for the book, where it kind of felt like I was working on all sections at once, where, I had the book compiled and in design, and every week I would look at what I had made and then kind of decided where to tweak things. Did I need to change a font in chapter 2? Did the sequencing in chapter 3 make sense? So because it became such an amorphous process that seemed to flow out in all directions, serialization just did not seem to make sense. But it probably would have, been much better for my sanity and the people around me if I had serialized it in chunks, because it felt crazy to produce this much work and just sit on it for 2.5 years.
And I know this just from working with Eddie, and I actually think this is good. Is he pretty hands off when it comes to editing still?
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a conversation about the content of what I'm doing. He's just always been game to publish whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering, because I was thinking this was all you and your vision, because I'd worked with him and put out a book before, and I was like, that's exactly how it was. And that's how I operate as an editor. It's like, hey, do your own thing. I'll give you guidelines, and if you need anything, let me know. But otherwise, just cook what you want. I really like that process. Do you like that, or do you think that you'd like to work with an editor in the future?
I mean, I think I would like to work with an editor in the future just to see what that feels like.
Yeah, and also that's not a diss on, like I said, that's how I edit as an editor and function. So when I say, would you like to work on one? I just mean, you're so used to having no editor. I just didn't know if it was something you'd be into.
No, I get what you mean. I think Demon Summoner Gash Gash is such a weird, gigantic book because there was no editor. I'm sure if I worked with an editor, they'd be like, this could be 120 pages and twice as good. And I would probably agree with whatever, insight they had. And, ultimately, I think my goal is to make something that is really tight, narratively speaking, with almost this Pixar perfect level of precision. So, Yeah, I've definitely thought about that, and that's something I'd absolutely be open to.
JB, have you ever actually had like a hands-on editor? I don't think I've ever actually asked you that.
I don't think so, actually.
Yeah. Which is funny because it's like an official position in comics. And I guess if you're like doing Batman or something where so many things have to be checked just to make sure there's more nuance to that job. But I think in indie comics, like how much editing
I think
can you really do before you start to...
I think it depends on the stakes, like, or at least the perceived stakes on the investment end. And so if it's like a larger publisher, more staff, more moving parts, then I could see the editors being a little more hands-on. You know, they have to meet certain deadlines or certain points in their established time frame that they have. And there's maybe like a higher need for oversight as a result. But, you know, if it's something like Strangers or smaller alternative press publications or even self-publishing, then, you know, those stakes aren't really there. And that's not really like a value judgment. That's more about just like, if more people have money involved in a project, then they're going to have more oversight as a result.
Right. Yeah, checks out. Hell yeah.
I remember a couple of years ago, you did like a Spider-Man fan comic. Do you still have that?
Do I still have it? Meaning
like available for people to like read or check out or purchase even?
Oh yeah. It's still on Instagram, and I tabled at New York Comic Con, and I had copies printed for the first time ever.
So
this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what got you to start doing that? Obviously, that was more of a fun personal project more than anything. But what made you decide to start working on that when you did?
Yeah, it was kind of just like a right place, right time sort of moment. I remember after finishing God Bless the Machine, I got COVID, and I was like deliriously ill to the point where like I couldn't remember my own name. And I was rewatching the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies for the first time since I was like, you know, a child. And then like right around that moment, someone had shown me Ed Kempner, the serial killer. He had like done this sit down interview where he talked about, I don't know, the ritual of being a serial killer. And I guess I saw some sort of connection between Spider-Man being this like discreet figure that like laughs at people while he breaks their bones and Ed Kemper. And I thought that was kind of an interesting angle. And then also around that time, I had been reading the Jack Kirby Collector, that magazine. And I want to say either Bruce Timm or Mike Mignola had done an interview where they talked about seeing Spider-Man for the first time as a child. And they described him being like a creepy figure. And I thought that was something that's really lost in modern interpretations of the character. And I thought that was interesting. And then I guess, I mean, while I started to work on it, I was like, oh, and I can kill Spider-Man at the end of this. Like, that'll be insane. Like, what a crazy way to end this comic. And that was really fun, too.
So Spider-Man sort of like one of your earliest comics that you got into as a kid?
Yeah. My dad has 9 brothers and 1 sister. And the one sister owns this mom and pop drugstore in Brewster, Massachusetts. And my first ever memory is like sitting on my mom's lap reading an issue of the Clone Saga. Okay. So yeah, that's where it starts.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow. So 9 brothers and 1 sister. That's like
that's farmhand.
Yeah, I was
family.
Gonna say, that's like a rural Korean family in the 70s.
Free labor type family.
Yeah, that's crazy.
My dad's gonna love it when I tell him you said that. No, he grew up, I mean, big Irish Catholic family, grew up in New Rochelle, like outside of the city. So yeah.
No farm,
just alcoholism and Catholic guilt.
Hell yeah. I say that from personal experience. My my great-grandmother had 11 kids, and I remember asking, why she had so many kids, because she had 3 that passed away, which would put up to 14, which is insane. And she was like, well, it was just cheap labor at the time, and your grandfather needed help on the farm. I was like, fuck.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I don't think I ever got an insight into why they had so many kids. My dad is the youngest of the 11, and I'm the youngest of like 35 or 40 cousins. And I know there was like an attempt at a 12th child from my grandmother, and it did not go well.
Is your family supportive of your work? I know you mentioned your mom was, so I'm guessing pretty good nurturing environment there for the arts.
I mean, like, I don't think I could have had a better environment. Like my dad and I would go to comic conventions together throughout my whole childhood. And my mom would do like a similar thing where I remember one time in 5th grade, I had gotten really fixated on a copy of Blankets by Craig Thompson in like Barnes and Noble. Like I couldn't stop thinking about the cover because it was just like this really specific shade of blue. And so I like asked to be excused to go to the principal's office. And I called my mom and I was like, Mom, like there's this book at Barnes and Noble called Blankets. Like, can you please buy it?
Dedication.
And she did.
Yeah. Hey, hell yeah. Shout out to your mom, dude. Do they read your work, your
Yeah.
parents?
Do they read my work? I don't think so, but like they're super stoked on it. They're
They've got a copy in the house. You just don't know if they've ever opened it.
Yeah. Actually, fun fact, 2 of the missing posters on the cover of Demon Summoner Gash Gash are my parents. Because like a running joke in my family was when one of the comics I made in high school, I had like labeled a body bag, like a character enters a room full of body bags, and like one of them was my mom's name. And so she's always like, I need more than that. You know, I need to be a more substantial character in your comics. So now they're on the cover.
Hell yeah. I see that now. I've got it over here. So one thing I do want to go back to real quick is you said you were making zines in high school, and I know you were getting some kind of online traction with people buying them there. Were you selling this stuff locally? Like, what was the mission there? Was it just something like, hey, I have to do this because this is what everybody else is doing? Like, did you have an idea to like sell it and try to make a sustainable business model in high school? What was the plan there with distribution of your zines at such a young age?
Yeah, I mean, I was just making the work compulsively. There weren't really zines. There were 2 books. One was 105 pages, and the other was was like 200.
And these were the books you were printing on your Reso?
No. I think I was using like Lulu for those. Do you guys know that Lulu, the like shitty print on demand website?
I've never used it, but I've definitely heard of it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of how the distribution was working. I was printing them through Lulu and then just like selling them on Tumblr. And the first one, I mean, they both sold okay for, high school comics. I think I probably sold like 50 of the first and 100 and something of the second. But the risograph came into play when I was in art school.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just misunderstood that there. Okay. So you've been making work, I mean, got 10 plus years at this point, and I think it's an accomplishment to have 100 plus pages of anything done at a high school level, especially for you to go out and print it and try to sell it and everything like that. Now that you've been in the game for so long, what does your process look like, and has it changed over the last decade plus of making work for the better or worse?
Wow, that's a great question and not something I've ever thought about. So just give me a second. It's kind of hard to remember what the process was like in high school or part of art school. But at this point, what generally happens is I have like a notes file for any given project, and I just assemble different aesthetic ideas and like the big tentpole moments in the story, kind of artistic goals I have and stuff I want to get better at. That's another big part of it. And when I feel like I have enough of those tentpole moments and some sort of interesting aesthetic idea that I haven't necessarily tried yet, that's when I'll actually get to the point of writing a shitty first draft that I'll, no matter how big the project is, I like to do the first draft of a script in like a day or a couple days just to like get it all out there. And then I'll sort of from there, like break it down into how many pages I think it'll be, and then write a tighter script, and then get to penciling and inking in, probably 10-page chunks until the work is completed.
And are you working analog or digital? I'm assuming your colors are digital, but are you actually drawing on a tablet, or are you drawing, Bristol ink, all that?
Yeah, so I would say like 80% of any given page is drawn on paper with a brush and ink. But then there is an element of it that I think you can tell is like digitally manipulated. There's always some portion of the page that I'm adding like a little collage or design element that's digital.
Now, do you have any interest in like, drawing digitally at all, or are you just kind of attached to paper?
I feel like there's a really interesting wave of artists like working on their iPads using Procreate, and that has made me more interested in it. Because at this point, like what my penciling looks like is I do very rough pencils, but then I scan it and then kind of finish it just like drawing on my trackpad to do the finer details. So I have been thinking more about about penciling digitally, but I mean, like, to me, doing like brush and ink drawing is like just one of the great joys of life. So I can't imagine leaving that behind.
So, what are your favorite tools to use? Like everything that through trial and tribulation, your go-tos.
Well, I used to use a Winsor Newton Series 7 number 2 or number 3, but the last like 4 or 5 I've bought have been just like complete dog shit. So I was using calligraphy brushes for a while on Demon Summoner Gash Gash because they can hold a really uniform line for a really long time, more so than like your standard sable brush. But now I'm kind of just using like shitty disposable sable brushes, and I don't love them, but that's like what I'm working with. And then there's like, a gaggle of little synthetic brush pens from jetpens.com, who do not sponsor me, but shout out. And then Micron's Pit pens and Strathmore Series 100 11 by 17 Bristol.
Hell yeah. Are you drawing that full 11 by 17 or are you cutting that down, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so what I do is I pencil the page at like print size, so like 6.5 by 10, and then I'll scan it, do my spot blacks, and like adjust the page in Photoshop, and then I'll blow it up to 11 by 17 and ink it then. And the thought process there is that, if the compositions look right at print size, then I don't really have to worry about it when I'm inking at 11 by 17, which I think you can kind of get in your head about if you're drawing that big, without any sort of plan beforehand.
For sure. Now, do you sell original pages? I should have looked into this. I didn't see anything on your Instagram where you were actively trying to do that, but I could have missed it.
No, I haven't. People have asked to buy pages from the Spider-Man comic and God Bless the Machine, but I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. I just I'm going to get like $200 for it it's like, I don't know. It's not worth it to me at this point to sell it.
And is that because you have an attachment to it or just because you don't feel like bothering with it?
I would say it's a little bit of both, but I would say more so the attachment to it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because like some people use it as like a way to make ends meet. And then some people are just like, yeah, I spent so much time with these pages, I can't, picture getting rid of them. Now, that said, if you need an art dealer, we know a guy. I'm just kidding. No, seems like everybody knows that guy. So,
a little bit. We'll stay in process for a little bit, and then we'll move on here. Let's talk about color palettes. How do you approach color palettes, and why you make the sort of the decisions that you do?
Yeah, great question. So for me, like the way I color comics, it just feels like the most instinctual, intuitive way to do it in terms of the colors I choose. Like, I just want my comics to have this weird, shitty kind of technicolor, putrid look to them. And it's always been that way. Like, even when I was really struggling to figure out how to color things, like there was kind of this North Star in my head that I was working towards. I would say something that really helped in terms of building up my confidence as a colorist was I do these monthly comedy show posters, and I had been doing those for about 2.5 years before deciding to color Demon Summoner Gash Gash. And that kind of like gave me the sea legs in terms of like, okay, I know how to color well enough that I can do this whole book probably. But actually, sorry, let me touch on one more thing. In terms of the actual colors for Demon Summoner Gash Gash, they were color picked from like 2 random pages of OMAC by Jack Kirby. It was just this one page with just a lot of like green and pink on it. But there's, it's like 16 colors. And that ended up being the palette for the whole book, pretty much.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's interesting because it's like, it's not hyper saturated the way you would think about Kirby's stuff. But it's also not muddy. It just has like this like muted tone to everything. So stuff still pops, but it's not as overwhelming, which I think works for the story you're telling.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so did you already have an idea moving, like when you were thinking about the story and kind of like doing the outlines and maybe thumbing it out, did you already have an idea of how you wanted to approach color? Or was that something that you didn't really think about until it came time to start coloring the inks?
No, it was a complete accident. My initial intention was for the book to be in black and white, but, maybe I drew the first 80 pages in black and white with the intention to print it that way. But the book felt so somber. And to me, like from that initial conception of what I wanted to do, I wanted there to be this real like playfulness to it. And so like kind of on a whim, I colored the page where Matilda, the protagonist, like holds the spray can to her head and like trips out into the spirit world. And that was just like such a lightning bolt moment that I was just like, fuck it, let me just color the whole thing. This is exactly what I've been looking for. So it was definitely fly by the seat of your pants. Let me just figure this out piece by piece. But I think that worked to my benefit, having such like a large amount of pages completed by the time I actually decided to color it, because I could concretely understand how different scenes would correspond with like different color palettes.
And, did you like have to develop character designs for everything before you started working on these pages?
So I think I had the main characters designed. So Matilda, Mason, Felix, and Lucas.
Okay.
But others I don't remember doing as much. I mean, I always try to iterate on major character designs before I actually draw them. I feel like I'm pretty lousy with character designs, so I like tried to be better at it.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because there's just a lot of stuff going on in this book. And I mean, I have a hard enough time trying to keep characters consistent with established designs, let alone making one on the spot and then trying to carry that consistency through the story. Were there any instances where you had to do that with like maybe more minor characters?
Where I struggled to keep them consistent over the course of the book?
Yeah, or like where you're having to constantly think about that while you're working on it.
Not so much. I would say the most difficult character to draw was like the giant monster at the end.
Okay.
Just because it has so many specific parts,
Right.
and to just make sure it looked okay was very difficult. But yeah, I don't think drawing characters consistently was something I struggled with necessarily.
Okay. And then environments. How do you approach thinking about environments in your stories?
Yeah, so I think about how an environment works logically and what the people in those environments do on like a daily basis. And then I also just love drawing things in isometric perspective. And what I'll do a lot of times is, if I'm drawing the interior of a bar, for example, I'll find like 10 to 15 bar interiors I like from across the internet and whatever books I have, and then kind of think intensely about what's interesting from each reference. But then when it's time to actually draw that environment, I don't look at any of the reference, and I kind of let my mind, combine them in whatever way makes sense.
Do you stick to any specific like rules, whether like broader rules about comic making or like your own personal rules about comic making? And do you tend to try and circumvent those rules or break them intentionally?
I think my ultimate goal is to deliver like a satisfying experience from a narrative perspective for the reader. And then I also really want to use comic specific language to enhance that story. But I think what you can do, with a book like Demon Summoner Gash Gash is, the first 70% of the story is told in this real world. And then because of that, it's really interesting to the reader, I think, to do this weird section that takes place in a different realm that kind of breaks all the rules I set forth thus far from like a visual perspective. So I'm thinking about that a lot, like basically setting up a system that becomes a visual design system that becomes familiar to the reader, that I can manipulate or contrast when it makes sense to serve what I'm trying to say and the story I'm trying to tell.
Right. Okay.
One thing I did notice that you do in your work that I do want to ask about, that I meant to ask about earlier, is there are sequences in the book where the gutters of a page, you've completely just like made images and then you put the panels on top of it. And when I say images, I mean, they're more abstract. They're not anything, I feel like it's more of a stylistic choice that goes with the story. Now, I just kind of want to get a glimpse into your mind on the process of that, because some you have the traditional gutters, they are, filled in with blacks, but I mean, there's nothing going on in them. And then some you've got this digital rendering and collage work going on under the panels. I don't want to, just be like, oh, where does that idea come from? But like,
Where does that idea come from?
Yeah, where does that idea come from? And, how do you decide to put that in? And are those just digital collages? What are you doing there?
Yeah, so I think that sort of speaks to the idea of like setting up a visual system and then like manipulating it in service of the story. Like I think what you're talking about generally takes place in like the like demon spirit world.
Exactly.
Sequence.
That's what it's one of those things with like comics where it's like, the normal story, you've got these like black panel borders. And then when you go to the spirit world, everything that the panel sits on top of are these like collages and like digital renderings and just things you're doing in the background. I don't know. I'm sorry if that's a disservice to call it that. I just don't know what else to call those that they're sitting on top of. But yeah,
that's what they are. They're digital collages. Yeah, I mean, I think in that instance, it helps signify to the reader that they're in a different place in the story than they have been up until that point, and kind of speaks to what the protagonist is going through, where they're kind of like they've been warped into this different realm that's different than what's been experienced thus far. But in terms of the actual collages, a lot of them are like low res 3D scans of people's brains that I just layered different like color hold and texture maps over until they looked just fucked and weird. Yeah.
Do you know the comic artist Jock?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, Jock does like a lot of people think that it's actually like digital, but I've seen his process. Like he does a lot of stuff where like I guess like the gutters of his pages, it'll look like stains and like digital, like, I don't know, like hemorrhages is what I refer to him as. But I guess he's doing that and like scanning it and moving the pages in the scanner and stuff like that. So I do think it's interesting. And it's also just kind of, to me, like it does show you that you're in a different place in the comic, but it also reinforces this digital world we live in. And I think it's great that you're not, because I feel like one thing that you see in comics is there's a hard line between digital and analog purist. And I feel like one thing you're doing is you're kind of marrying all this stuff together and really unapologetically. So it's just one of my takeaways from reading the books. So I was curious about that and I had that written down to ask about. So thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely like a major goal of mine is, how can I incorporate these weird, gritty textural and typographic elements and marry it with, analog line art in a way that feels interesting and fresh.
Yeah. And I do like how the textures vary depending on the context of the story, where some...
Yeah, you didn't copy paste that shit.
Right. Some of the textures are very organic, like you said, very analog, and then others are not. Others are very lean more into the digital side, which I like.
Yeah, I'm looking at one and it's, it's a scan of nerve endings, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Or even just like the drags of ink on certain pages that maybe are like changed, like the color, so it's not just black, or some of like the splotchy elements, stuff that feels less intentional versus like these like hard, more like pixelated images and stuff like that. It's interesting to see those combined or overlapped or in contrast with one another. And these are just going around in the background in the gutters, like you said. So it's not even like the focal point of these things. You're just building on top of it.
Yeah, it's just a nice little textural element to keep things interesting, I guess.
No, yeah. Just keep the eye busy.
Yeah.
Without being distracting.
This is a completely random question that I had, but have you ever done any like wood block work?
Yeah, a fair amount. I took a woodblock class at RISD, and one of the most interesting assignments we had to do there was we did like live figure drawing, but like we were carving it into wood as the model sat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that comes to mind.
The reason why I asked that is because like the chunkiness of your work, it kind of reminds me of like woodblock and like printmaking, almost like carving into the woodblock that I've seen. So I just didn't know if that was an influence on your work. So it's just something I wanted to ask.
Yeah, I mean, I got my degree in printmaking at RISD.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Hell yeah. All right. So now comes my favorite question to ask you, Connor. Even though the new thing's out and it technically isn't even available to everyone yet, unless you go to a specialty shop, what's next, man? What's next in the pipeline? I know this is like, it's so dismissive to be like, oh, I worked on this for 2.5 years, but we're in such a gimme society. What do you have in the pipeline project wise?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just going to be doing smaller stories that I'll serialize on Instagram for the first time. In terms of content, I don't know when I'll actually draw it, but I've like outlined a pretty substantial spiritual sequel to Demon Summoner Gash Gash And then there's another series I'm thinking about doing that's kind of like my take on like a Shonen Jump or superhero type thing, but a little more body horror oriented. So that's what I'm thinking about, but that could change tomorrow.
So you said you were going to focus on posting on Instagram. One thing that I've noticed about your work is I feel like it would be a disservice if you were to take some of these pages and try to condense them to a swipeable format. I'm sure there's a way to do it. Are you going into this Instagram comic with the swipe in mind, or are you just going to work as you normally do and just try to figure out how to get it posted over there?
Yeah, I'm going to just work as I normally do and then, post it. Yeah, I think posting on Instagram is just, it's like feeding slop to pigs, but you have to do it.
You're right. Yeah.
So that's how I think about it.
Hell yeah.
So one of the questions that we get, obviously we do get asked about how to make a living in this industry or something adjacent to it and still be able to like make comics maybe in your free time or whatever. But another question that we get a lot is about work-life balance. Let's say hypothetically you do get a job that's in the arts or something that involves your specific skill set that relates to comics one way or the other. And so you're working creatively 8.5 hours a day, 5 days a week. But then you also are working in your personal work, your comics, or maybe even collaborative projects, or maybe comics for another publisher that maybe is not something that's specifically yours. How do you find that balance? How do you maintain it? And what have you learned over the years since doing this to find a way to manage all of this for your own sanity's sake while still, being able to pump out work?
Yeah, I mean, I think a crucial element of it is that every job I've had out of college has been a remote job. And so I think the benefit there, and like read into this as much as you think, as long as you do the work, no one bothers you, like no one's like, checking on you in your cubicle to see if you have completed your work for the day. So I think that helps with the work-life balance. Generally, when I was working on Demon Summoner Gash Gash and God Bless the Machine, I was working, 6 days a week and then taking a day off. And you have to make an effort to be a real human being, like while you make art. I mean, at least if you're making comics, because comics are grueling and they take a billion hours. But, if you don't take the time to like, I don't know, go to the botanic garden, or my initial thought was to say smoke fentanyl next, but that's not productive. I don't know, to have some sort of balanced.
That might actually ease a lot of people's pain.
Yeah.
By being dead. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the big takeaway, I think, from this section of the podcast is smoke fentanyl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of got lost in whatever I was saying. Does that help?
No, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you ever feel burnout, and what do you do to help alleviate that when you find yourself in those situations?
Yeah, so finishing this book, I felt the most dramatic burnout of my entire life. The book had taken such an emotional and physical toll that I kind of felt like I wasn't sure if I was going to make comics again after finishing it. I was just so completely spent, and I couldn't read comics. I couldn't make comics. I just was totally fried. Yeah. And my dad was like having health problems too. So there was a lot going on. What eventually I found helped was kind of just like making a real effort to be a real human being and kind of like reestablishing relationships with old friends and making an effort to get out of my house. I think I've spent so much of my life feeling joy being locked away in a dark attic apartment, working on something for hours and weeks and years at a time. But I don't really feel that as much now. Yeah, so I guess just leave your apartment and make friends is my advice.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, Connor, thank you so much for coming on, man. You're welcome back anytime. I know you did mention what you were working on next, but are there any shows you're doing? Where can people, get the work, interact with you, find you online, meet up with you, all that?
Yeah, I live in Bed-Stuy next to a chicken coop. So if you find the chicken coop, I'll be, disgruntled walking with a cup of coffee, I'm sure nearby. So just like look for me on the streets of Brooklyn, and maybe I'll be at Mocha. And otherwise, you can just look at my Instagram.
Hell yeah. Are you not much of a tabler?
I did New York Comic Con, which was like 4 days, and that was pretty intense. So I don't know if I will do another one in the near future, but we'll see.
I don't know if you've done, I'm sorry if I'm mansplaining to you. I don't know if you've done small press shows, but they're so much different than New York Comic Con as far as how they feel and the toll they take on you. It's two different beasts. Definitely both have terrible and good aspects to them, but I guess if you've done Mocha, you've done a small press show though.
Oh no, sorry. I might do Mocha in the spring. I did Comic Arts Brooklyn like right out of college, but
okay. Yeah, so I'm sure you're aware of the differences between them. Yeah.
I've been talking to Eddie, and he's been saying that copies of Demon Summoner Gash Gash are like flying off the table at small press shows. So
hell yeah,
maybe I should.
Congrats. Yeah, no, I just if you want to table. I personally haven't tabled in years. I think it's there's a give and take system to it, but yeah, I was trying to think. I was like, I don't think I've ever seen Connor on the road anywhere, so. I was wondering if you just had an aversion to doing shows or what was up with that.
A little bit, but maybe that.
I don't blame you though. Yeah. I don't blame you. It's easier, with strangers pushing it. It's probably easier for him to be at a show and just bring you in for a couple hours to sign books,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there were some professional connections at New York Comic Con that were cool, but it was a lot.
All right. And did you say your Instagram? I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah. Connor Makes Comics on Instagram.
Sweet. All right. So get the new book from Strangers. You can get it at any local comic shop if you ask them to order it or online at Wig Shop Web Shop. And do Strangers actually still have a web store?
They do. And you can buy Demon Summoner Gash Gash by Connor McCann on there right now.
Okay. Sweet. Is the old book still in print or are you reprinting that?
Yeah, it's still in print.
Okay.
Yep, it's on the website too.
All right. Sweet. All right. Well, thank you so much, Connor, for coming on. And listeners, as always, stay gutter.
I walk up in the store, bitch, I'm a 10. Don't ask me about no niggas, don't fuck with them. These bitch niggas fake as hell, they like Sims. I don't want no Honda, bitch, I want a Benz. I walk up in the store, bitch, I'm a 10. Don't ask me about no niggas, don't fuck with them. These bitch niggas fake as hell, they like Sims. I don't want no Honda, bitch, I want a Benz. I don't want the clear windows, want the 10s. I walk up in the store, bitch, I want 10.